So, Greg, do I wish you a happy Thanksgiving up in Canada? How does it work?
Nope, we call it Thursday here. There's nothing.
Happy Thursday.
I like it better that way. What are you thankful for this year, Jonah?
Well, first of all, I'm thankful for our listeners. Welcome back, folks. Another fun week here. We're going to get to our special guest, Joseph Cohen, co-founder and CEO of Infinite Machine, who just raised $9 million for a very cool-looking moped. But to not dodge the question, what am I thankful for? I guess I'm thankful to be in California. It's could always be worse.
Yes, we'll get to what that means now more than ever in Governor Newsom's last bastion of the resistance. But I have to say, I'm personally thankful for not being in the United States. I'm instead flying to Toronto tomorrow on U.S. Thanksgiving Day to see the bike lanes before they're gone, because Ontario is going to go ahead with this plan to rip them right out of the ground. So.
I hope you kiss a little plastic bollard on the top of it right before it's pried from your hands.
Before it's shredded into plastic reuse, yes. Well, but it is Thanksgiving, and that means people are moving. So I guess you and I are. Well, I'm flying. It doesn't matter here. But yes, how many millions of Americans will be traveling as we tape this on the Wednesday and the day, of course, of Thanksgiving itself?
Yes, if it's Thanksgiving, it must be time for everyone's best data, graphic, content, marketing stuff to come out. So INRIX and AAA have their usual travel index. So 80 million people, or nearly 80 million people expected to hit the roads. It's going to be some serious traffic. I'm sure we'll get that classic image of the 405 at dusk.
Never gets old, man, even when they repeat the same photo every year for 10 years.
Yeah, they probably haven't actually gotten a new chopper up there in a long time. But the actual number, 79.86 million. Of those, 71.74 million will be forecasted as cars. About 5.8 on air and 2.2 on other. So shout out to the couple of people taking Amtrak or, I don't know, hitchhiking.
I would say at least, well, the hitchhikers, I don't know, but at least the folks on Amtrak are the ones who will not be, at least even a possibility of being struck and killed by a car. So stay safe out there, folks. Again,
the Hudson Tunnel's track record's not so good these days.
Yeah, that's true. But yes, we'll never find out the statistics, and there are people, unfortunately, who will die in all that traffic. So,
and the best and worst time to travel. Basically, by the time you're listening to this on Thursday, minimal traffic impact expected, but if you were leaving, don't do it on Wednesday afternoon. But by the time you hear this, it's too late.
Yes, if you're listening to this in the car, you have done this right. So congrats.
And then there's another kind of fun spin on this that Lyft put out, where they were looking at basically when people hit the bars and which cities people are hitting the bars at and which ones they're avoiding. And what I kind of like about this is, in a way, it's an index of where do people live versus where were they born? Where are they leaving during the holidays to go back to their hometowns to see ma and pa? And so I think we can make this Greg's guessing game.
Jonah, you're reminding me about how my family stopped playing Trivial Pursuit with me when I was 11 after I started winning. So, but my track record's not so good at these. Let's see how we go.
It's Trivial Pursuit's no fun if you win them all, Greg. But I want one city that's where the most surge in bar activity happens Thanksgiving Wednesday, and then one city where the least, where most people have left. I'll take any of the top 5.
Okay, so let's start with leaving, since we're in the sort of transit mood. And so obviously the trick of this solution space is, what are the cities where they have the most outward number of young people who left their hometown, and where do they go to? So in terms of people who are leaving Thanksgiving, it's going to be big coastal metros. Let's go New York, LA, Washington, D.C. That's a bunch of migrants. Let's say Miami, and Chicago.
You're good on the transit yuppie index there. So there's only 3 that are actually below average, because the rest, I guess, there's still enough people hitting the bars. But DC number 1, SF number 2, Miami Beach technically, which is not the same city of Miami, but Miami Beach number 3, And then New York and New Orleans, oddly, but those are actually still slightly above the median point.
There you go. All right, so
Pretty
so
good.
then where are people fleeing from in life? I mean, like obviously I'm going to go with like, and sorry to any residents of these cities. I'll say Chicago again, having grown up in the Midwest and not going back.
You're getting Chicago on both sides of
I'm
this.
going
huh?
Chicago on both sides of this. That's the capital of the Midwest, Jonah. That's how it works. And then I'm going to go like Detroit, Cleveland, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I love the Tulsa, and let's say I don't know, Atlanta, somewhere in the South.
You were honing in there, but Atlanta's a growth city, Greg. Come on. The winner is Omaha, where 6.1 times as many people are drinking on Thanksgiving Wednesday as on an average Wednesday, followed by El Paso, beautiful Bakersfield, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and bringing up the rear, Cincinnati.
There you go. Are you a landlocked city that is nowhere near a large metro? You got a lot of bars. You got a lot of drinking in those bars.
That's true. Yeah, I would like to see like the average distance from salt water for any of these.
Well, thank you, Liv, for that extremely on-brand content. I should also know for the day after, when you're nursing your hangover and considering your Black Friday shopping sales, as you might expect, Americans are desperate for deals, because of inflation there. Bloomberg had a whole piece on people who started Christmas shopping back in March. And I'm sure, I don't know, Jonah, have you seen any good Black Friday mailers yet? That's just called Friday here. I'm blacking them out of my own mind. But what are the best deals
Amazon
so far?
won't sell you something at a discount if you use the .ca domain.
That's probably true. They're definitely trying. I gotta get the VPN fired up here if I'm gonna do proper Black Friday.
I want cheap shit and I want it now. I have not been looking for discounts. Maybe I should. I mean, I've got a baby on the way. This is my chance to get a discount snoo or something.
There you go. Well, I was gonna make a joke there about the classic Charles Duhigg anecdote about Target using data science to figure out that someone was pregnant before she told her parents. But I also saw that Gen Z hates Target, and that Target's in massive decline. Walmart is where the kids are at these days. So, learning something new every day here on
The levels of irony escape me.
There you go. Well, I think that covers our Thanksgiving content. Unless there's anything I missed here.
No, yeah, turkey's prices are down because no one wants to eat turkey. That was the one point, but. Yeah,
it's all bad. Prices are high and no one wants to buy anything. So welcome people to our e-commerce podcast. You're welcome.
But so speaking of e-commerce, we can celebrate a couple new partners. I think it's a little interesting in terms of the 3PDs onboarding. So DoorDash just took on a bunch of new grocers, all kind of cute local regional grocers with adorable names. Fresh Encounter, Fruitful Yield, Plum Market, Robert Fresh Market. The famous Stu Leonard's, anyone in the Northeast knows that for some reason people from Connecticut love that one. I don't understand the appeal, but
Stu Leonard's all the way, baby. Well, Jonah, when you have a young
explain it
child,
to me, Greg.
when your young child is born, Jonah, and you go there to shop in peace and quiet, the animatronic animals and bands and things will keep your young child distracted while you buy discounted milk. So it's like Chuck E. Cheese, but it's a grocery store. It's great. You'll love it, and free samples. I've eaten my weight in kettle fried potato chips at Stu Leonard's over the years.
No one ever told me it was animatronics was what was going on in Norwalk. All right. Now I like it.
Yonkers especially. Yeah, they're all good there.
Wolt, which is DoorDash owned kind of European centric 3PD, also added a bunch of new partners. And I'm trying to think about how to make this a fun game for Greg. I'll tell you what, let's guess. I'll give you the name of the new partners and you have to guess what retail categories these are. Budni in Germany, Rossmann in Azerbaijan, Diozi Apotek in Sweden, and Sadikan in Kazakhstan.
Okay, well,
what are they selling?
Apotek's the giveaway here. These are pharmacies, correct?
Yes, they are
right.
pharmacies and
my high school German's coming back to me now.
Beauty
yes,
suppliers, exactly. And another one that's called an aptiki in Finland. So there's a nice cognate there somewhere.
Yes.
But on that cheery note, let's talk politics, Greg.
Yes. What are we thankful for? Things you won't be discussing with your family at the dining room table on Thanksgiving here. Where do we start? Let's start. Governor Newsom there in California. He's launched his own $7,500 EV credit. So the capital of the resistance here.
He's threatening to launch it. He hasn't launched it yet.
Yes. Well, you got to wait to see what Rasputin does there. I'm sorry, Elon Musk whispering in the president-elect's ear. But there's a whole discussion there about whether they get rid of the United States national credit. Speaking of autos, then there of course is again Canada. things are great in Canada this Thanksgiving, where they're freaking out here about the 25% proposed tariffs that, of course, President-elect Trump put out in a Truth Social post. True to form, I think, the Canadians put out a statement, Chrystia Freeland, basically saying, like, don't blame us for fentanyl, that's the Mexicans. Doug Ford actually said it was insulting to be compared to Mexico. All the Canadians are on brand. And, new President Sheinbaum, Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, put out a great letter where basically sort of, between the lines arguing that, retaliatory tariffs are in the offing, and ended it with her note that, the biggest exporters of Mexico to the States are General Motors, Stellantis, and Ford, which has been there for 80 years. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to the various automotive companies in Mexico.
It would be a shame.
There you go.
I mean, my one thought on this, or two thoughts really. One, I kind of love that if this screws over the Canadian economy, it happens right as a Conservative Party is kind of being whisked into power. So it could blow back well in terms of having them whisked right out a couple years later.
Well, also, good luck to all the voters in the red states in the middle of the United States there who will suddenly be paying higher prices for Canadian oil imports and refined products. That all comes down from pipelines there. So,
yeah.
Congrats.
So gerrymandered that I don't know if it'll matter. But yes, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot here. And then the other one on the kind of Newsom note, if they bring back the state tax credit, I really hope it's structured better this time than it was, because think about all the money we gave away to companies that then just said, thank you, but fuck you, in terms of Tesla. But also, there was other automakers that basically sued the state to get out of some like the clean vehicle regulations. I think we gave a bunch of money to Toyota, then they moved their headquarters to Texas. Like, I think if we're going to give away billions of state money, it'd be good to put some strings on it that at the very least like tie the automakers' hands for a couple of years. They got to play nice.
Well, speaking of state money, one thing that's also worth mentioning is score one for Secretary of DOT Buttigieg on Twitter, on the smoldering remains of Twitter there, where he pointed out that someone who tweeted at Elon Musk that the United States government has spent $7.5 billion on EV charger and built 9 of them. Secretary Buttigieg pointed out like $7.5 billion is the entire program, 9 states, not 9 chargers. It's covering over a decade. And after he laid out his whole arguments, Elon Musk said that is very helpful to know, and was very, very conciliatory towards it. So Twitter, still a place for civil discourse, better rather than your dining room table.
I think it's called X now, Greg, but God damn it,
true.
I will not use that name.
Zombie there. I will note, speaking of epic trolling here of one administration to another, President Biden, if you remember him, has proposed the expansion of Medicare to cover GLP-1 inhibitors, which is an incredibly epic trolling, a $35 billion proposed trolling of incoming Secretary of Health, RFK Jr. there. But it'll be interesting to see if we spend the final days of the administration handover arguing about whether we should all be able to go get shots of Wegovy and Ozempic. So we'll see. And I mean, if you're running a consumer packaged goods brand, that is just about as terrifying as, the potential bans. I think, the oil super majors are all very upset about Drill Baby Drill as well. Their share price is already reflected. So lots of good times. But also, what else? Speaking of tariffs and speaking of policy here, the bike lobby, Jonah. What is the bike lobby thing?
The bike lobby, which I'm sure is like 2 guys, they're both up in arms because the proposed tariffs would just be devastating. As anyone knows, we basically don't make bicycles in this country anymore. I think stats like 97% of bikes and bike components are made overseas. And so if you like riding a bike, it'll get a lot more expensive if these tariffs go through. I would say, obviously, like a bike is the sort of thing that it wouldn't be abstractly that hard to reshore here. They're not terribly complicated machines, but it's not like you can just snap your fingers and dust off like an old Schwinn factory that's been sitting there, waiting for someone to breathe new life into it. So stock up on your fixed gears ahead of time, people.
I was say you should definitely have it. I think I recall in one of Jane Jacobs' books, actually, in her various musings on economics, I think she argued that, Japan reviving its bicycling industry after World War II is like the first link in the chain to building up the Japanese auto industry. So, keystone infrastructure here, Jonah. You got to have a bike manufacturing. Reshore those jobs, people.
I think we still got auto manufacturing in this country, but yeah.
There you go. Make Schwinn great again. I'm all in favor of that. But I don't know that, and then we got some robotic stuff. I would say
we always got robotic stuff.
I would say I love Robot Corner on the Courier here. A couple things that jumped out at me, and they sort of dovetail. One, Pickle Robot, which I had not heard of, but they just secured $50 million in their Series B. and they got 30 orders for their truck unloading robots. So I love this story. It jumps out because like you can just sort of see like the automation links in the supply chains coming together, right? We got autonomous trucks, we got autonomous robots to unload the trucks, to bring onto your factory floor with Digit and all the other robots. So it's interesting to see like how that all is going to play out. And then related to that, or perhaps unrelated to that one, but trust me, it comes together, is The Verge had a great piece on Baidu's like $30,000 robo-taxis, the sixth generation of what they've got there. And like, it's amazing. Like, I'm pretty sure like like the screens alone in American EVs cost $30,000. And so like they can do this, but we can't. And then the ties them together is the international, I forget, but like one of the international robotics institutes that tracks this, put out their numbers like global robot density has doubled in like the last 7 years, and like China doubled in under 4. So it's interesting. China supposedly cheap and supposedly low cost and human powered. No, as they're aging, they're getting huge investments into robotics and automation as well.
That workforce size is already in decline. I'm just going to throw in the robot corner here. There was also, I saw a potato sorting robot that is able to identify defective potatoes. And if you don't know what a defective potato consumer, it's because they don't get to you. There's like the federal government has standards on how low the defect rate is, which is cracks and greenings and rot and rhizoids. So thank God a robot can do that too now. Soon there'll be no jobs left.
Machine vision for spuds. You got to love it. That reminds me, somewhat related is one. Yeah, I think just rolled out an AI company for Lacoste, spotting defects. So like basically do machine vision on the crocodile and basically can tell if it's counterfeit or not. So
I think the only thing defective is the person wearing the Lacoste.
There you go. Nothing will escape the scrutiny of our robot.
Sorry,
masters.
preppies. I feel like that's you probably had a Lacoste phase, didn't you, Greg?
Yeah, I switched to even something more annoying. I have a Maison Kitsune, so my Franco-Japanese polos. So.
No Izod.
They sold the brand back, John. I wrote about that years and years and years ago, but we digress. We digress.
Okay, so from potatoes, now we're on food. This one, somber news for New York. R.I.P. the dining shed. So after many false starts, this is finally the time that all the beloved dining sheds are getting torn down. Theoretically, some of them are going to come back after winter. So New York City changed its rules, so you can no longer have permanent dining sheds. You can get a complicated permit to get one that's allowed in the warmer months. But then what do you do with your dining shed for, 5 months out of the year? It's not like you have a ton of space in the back of the restaurant to just store a bunch of extra seats and plywood and whatnot. Are you supposed to throw it away and build a new one? That's super wasteful. So I think the stats are like only, 1,000 or so restaurants have applied for this new permit when they're at the peak where tens of thousands of restaurants that were truly enlivening the streets, whether it was in, central Manhattan neighborhoods or way out in the outer boroughs. I think these were kind of delightful in New York and elsewhere, and now they're just going to become parking again. It's so sad.
It's absolutely crazy. I mean, sure, you can make arguments about particularly ones that fall in disrepair, but like, the New York Times covering this, like, called out, the one that comes to mind instantly for me is Balthazar, which is, it basically builds a second dining room there. And so what? So you can just have more gridlock on Spring Street, Manhattan? It's utterly pointless. I mean, you could argue that perhaps they should be paying tax or some sort of rent to the city for that space in the same way we should be charging for parking spaces, all on-street parking. But yeah, I don't see the point of doing this. But
and it feels all the funnier to do it while they're making a last gasp effort to bring back congestion pricing. So like, okay, we are trying to limit the number of cars in the city, but we still need to keep all the fucking parking? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, I would like to see particularly like the pedestrianized stretches of Broadway, for example, where they really done, or what they're going to do on Fifth Avenue. I mean, there's not a ton of dining on that stretch of Fifth from Midtown to Central Park there, but like at the same time that you're trying to increase pedestrianizationized areas of Manhattan, they're ripping out the sheds, But it goes to show it's car culture. We must genuflect to our master, which is the car-owning bourgeoisie, man. They're the voters. That's Kathy Hochul's constituency. It's Doug Ford's constituency. It's Eric Adams' constituency.
And I will say there's one little glint of hope. Over the river in New Jersey, the state government just voted to make outdoor dining permanent. So I've always thought New Jersey, of the three directions of suburbia you can go in, they're the good one. And they take all the lumps and the jokes. But Governor Murphy just enacted legislation making outdoor dining permissions permanent for restaurants and certain alcoholic beverage retailers and manufacturers. So we can
This
party in JC.
This certainly confirms what everybody who's ever lived in New Jersey has told me, which is that they are more progressive than New York. So kudos. You
Yeah,
won
it's
this
also
round.
it builds way more housing than New York. Yeah, so shout out to Jersey.
I say we'll be all going to Hoboken now for our outdoor dining and drinking. So can't wait. I guess they already do.
And then I think our final little item for today, on the cheery side, some good transit news. So West Coast based for this one. In LA, Metro has rebounded its ridership, now exceeding 1 million for multiple months in a row, which I think puts it at basically, what is it, like 85% or so of the pre-pandemic ridership. And on weekends, it's exceeded what the pre-pandemic numbers were. So kind of goes to show you that if you keep running service frequently, if you expand bus lanes and open new rail, if you keep fares low, basically give people a reason to ride, they'll ride. And then up to the north in the SF Bay area where transit has faltered more, but Caltrain in particular has done well because they've made it useful.
I was gonna say it's that time of year in the hype cycle, by the way, where like bros on X are out there being like, we should just blow up Muni and replace it with 15,000 Waymos. That will fix everything. So
Yeah.
if there's anything that drives me off X, it will in fact be those kinds of tweets there. But globally, globally, I should note too, transit's expanding. Ho Chi Minh City has just opened their new line. The Riyadh Metro, well, I think the longest driverless system in the world, has just gone online. I do think it's telling that all the rising nations around the world are building brand new transit lines at the same time that we think about, putting a lot of Waymos into the narrow streets of SF. But
I did love that post because if you looked at it, it's like, where did you get any of these numbers from? It's like, oh, they're just best guesses. And it's like, oh, okay. So thank you, tech overlords. It's sometimes it helps to have some research behind your presumptions.
Absolutely. Somewhere Jarrett Walker was screaming into the void and showing off like surface street geometry here about the impossibility of that. But,
It works in the app.
Too.
Well, I think on that note, let's talk a little bit more about small-scale transport. So I'm going to talk with Joseph Cohen of Infinite Machine. I'm here with Joe Cohen, CEO and co-founder of Infinite Machine. Hey, Joe.
Hey, it's great to be here.
I'm excited about this one because you guys have been getting a lot of buzz, and I think deservedly so. So Infinite Machine, you guys just kind of released a very cool Halo vehicle. Obviously had some fundraising news, so firing in all cylinders, although I suppose that doesn't apply when it's an electric vehicle. So let's just start, what's an Infinite Machine? What's the P1? Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to be here. Our goal at Infinite Machine is to make the best non-car vehicles in the world and to really upgrade how we get around cities to be useful, fun, and better for the planet, better for our cities, better for other people, and really better for you to get around freely, to enjoy it, and to feel good throughout the experience. Our first product is P1. It's a scooter that was designed from the ground up for modern technology, for electrical drivetrains, for how we move and live in the world. And we designed it to be our ultimate vehicle for our hometown, New York City. So high performance seated scooter. It has a 72 volt removable battery that gets over 50 miles of range. It goes almost 60 miles per hour, instant silent torque, full 8-inch computer on wheels, cameras on the front and the back, connected to the internet, remote security features, GPS tracking, alarm, all of that. So we designed it to be our ultimate New York City vehicle. We look at the world of cars and electric cars, and you have this whole market of companies that are competing to make better, higher tech, higher performing, higher design products. And when you look at the world of non-cars, you don't see that. You see much more utilitarian, we call them like printer type products, or they're pieces of plastic over frames, and not stuff that inspires you. And we know that the future of transport in cities is not cars. It's not even electric cars. It's smaller, smarter vehicles. And our aspiration is to make the best vehicles in that category. And we just see a market that's really has a lot of white space, that the companies in the space, they're filling a commodity need, but they're not really moving us in all aspects of our lives.
I can feel the passion in your voice. I I think that's a nice segue. Like, let's talk about your background a little bit before getting into the nitty gritty of the company today. Like, you obviously come from an interesting sort of design background. How did you get here?
Yeah, so I spent my career building companies and designing products. So this is my first vehicle company. It's actually my first hardware company. The past 10 years I spent building software, and really from first principles thinking about the power of design and how you can use design to expose new technologies to people. So prior to this, I started a company called Universe, which is a really easy to use website building platform that's designed for mobile phones. And the challenge there was every person who uses a phone is now using the internet. Can you build the internet from a phone? When I started working on that 10 years ago, it was a really hard design problem. But the tech had gotten to the point where it was possible to solve. And with design, you could do it. And there's actually, in some ways, what we're building at Infinite Machine is very different than what we build at Universe, but there are ways that they're similar. One of the ways is that, when I started working on mobile apps, a lot of infrastructure had been built up to make it so that I could focus on making the best application possible. So you had cloud services, you had iOS, everywhere. You had an install base that was massive. You had high bandwidth, chipsets and LTE connections. You had literacy, so people knew how to use these devices. Mm-hmm. So I, as an application developer, could really innovate at the interface layer and really unlock new capabilities using the power of design and not have to focus on any piece of core infrastructure. The same thing is true with EVs. Right now, I don't need to build any core piece of infrastructure to make the best non-car EVs in the world. When we think about motors, there is a very robust technical infrastructure supply chain that exists for producing high-end motors. Same is true for batteries. Same is true for really every component of the vehicle. That was not true 10 years ago. If we were doing this 10 years ago, we would have to invest most of our capital into battery development, and we don't have to do that.
Just tooling up, yeah.
Yeah, so that lets us focus on the end product, the application, and really delivering the best product for people. So I think, my thesis is that 10 years ago, if you were building EVs of any type, the constraint in the market was supply. So if you could produce them, you could sell them. We shifted to the point where the constraint in the market has gone from supply to demand. In other words, do people want to buy your product? And when the constraint is on demand, that means your talent should be focused on making something people really, really want. And that's what we're great at. I started this company with my brother Eddie and our co-founder Zach. We're product builders. Prior to this, we built all kinds of different products and brands. And so, we think that it's a feature, not a bug, that we're coming from an outside category. It lets us bring fresh thinking into the space. We're lifelong New Yorkers, urbanists. We also, we're futurists. We think the future can be radically better than the past, that new technology can make that happen. When you couple it with great design, it can be an experience that's fundamentally empowering to people. Last thing I'll say is at Infinite Machine, we make vehicles. We make tools for exploring and navigating your city. But what it comes down to, the why is, we want to unlock a city for people, and we really want to unlock the ability to live life in your city on your own terms, to color outside the lines, to control your time, to control where you're going. And so, we're really excited about new technologies on the horizon, but we're less about autonomous robots, and we're more interested in autonomous humans. So making people fully in control of their lives and putting them in the captaincy in that way. And so we'll embrace all these technologies to give humans more leverage and scale, but it's in service of you and not some kind of drone-oriented future.
I like that line. I can I can see you using that one well. I want to drill in on the design here because obviously it feels so core to the vision. It's the shame of a podcast is I'm gonna have to describe this thing, but we'll put some photos in the company newsletter. But the P1 is an evocative vehicle. It's I hate to say it, it sort of feels like a Cybertruck-esque, but on a more human scale. But you nail that sort of 80s cyberpunk look that's back in vogue. hard, sleek angles that scream aerodynamic. Talk me through the design process there.
So good design is about form and function. And so when we think about form, we wanted a thing that looked like the future. We wanted a thing that was exciting, that was beautiful. We call it a brutal elegance. As much as we were inspired by cars, we were inspired by architecture, by brutalism, by sculptors like Donald Judd, by industrial designers like Richard Sapper and obviously Johnny Ive and what they've done at Apple, taking much more of a product-centric approach to it as opposed to a more traditional car where it's like a glossy, voluminous structure. This is a city vehicle. It's a tool. It's going to get beat up, and so we wanted to make something that was not only beautiful but functional.
Rugged, yeah.
Rugged. If it gets knocked over, if it gets scratched, it's going to be okay. These panels. So the design of P1 is it's made of steel and aluminum. It's mostly flat, planar surfaces, which makes the ease of manufacturing a lot more for us. So as a startup, that's advantageous. And it's designed to be used. So, like a Leica camera or your MacBook, if this thing gets scuffed up a little bit, it's going to be fine. It's going to get character.
And patina, yeah.
Yeah, and it's designed to be customized too. So we have a rack system where you can mount different modules to it. These are flat surfaces, so if you want to sticker them up or put a vinyl wrap, it really lends itself to that. I think artists are going to go crazy on them. And so we wanted a thing that was inspiring, that can bring you the appeal. Like, I looked at something like the Cybertruck and I'm like, that thing is awesome, but I live in New York and it doesn't make any sense. And so what does make sense? Well, a vehicle that you can fit 6 of in the footprint of a Cybertruck or more, 8. And you can cut through traffic, park anywhere, enjoy it, experience your city, not be in a hermetically sealed bubble. So that's a little bit of how we think about the design. And in automotive, you think of the world of automotive, design is like the thing, right? What makes a Porsche, what makes, any of the brands that we, have posters up in our room.
It's all a commodity underneath that, yeah.
So we think that bringing some of that spirit to the non-car space can also change behavior. That can make it not only like an eat your vegetables kind of thing, but something that's fucking exciting. And the motorcycle world has had that, but motorcycles are really a niche. It's a recreational vehicle, and so we want to bring a bit of that passion to your day-to-day life in a city.
Yeah, and motorcycles are also sort of seems like a dying category at this point. If you look at the sales, are half of what they were a decade ago. So
exactly.
I'm curious, based on what you said about you see people modding these, doing little art projects on them. Are you driving around Brooklyn with a stock version, or do you have the custom founders kit on it?
So we have a few fleet vehicles here. So we're shipping production vehicles in the spring of next year. And so I don't yet have a production vehicle, but I have some of our early prototypes. When I get my production one, I'm going to get the standard issue founder launch edition, which is silver aluminum on black. It's, we've gone all out on this thing. Every millimeter is considered. We may do, other iterations and collabs over time, and we're always experimenting with new materials. But we're going to make the module I'm excited about is a speaker module. So you can kind of attach a boombox to the rear and post up at a park and
take it to the beach. Yeah, cool.
Exactly.
Who can I ask? I don't know if you guys are sharing this. Who's actually building them, or where are they being built? To whatever degree you're comfortable.
So we design everything here in New York. We engineer everything here in New York. We also have a prototype factory in New York where we build vehicles and we work out the engineering and the mechanicals. Once we lock in a design and a mechanical engineering model, we partner with suppliers all over the world to produce them at scale. And what I'll say on that is just we wanted to work with experienced manufacturers. We're trying to do a lot here. We're inventing a new vehicle. And so where we can reduce risk, we want to. So to the earlier point about infrastructure, supply chain and manufacturing infrastructure is now online in a way it wasn't 10 years ago. We're leveraging that. That allows us to operate more cost effectively, deliver a higher quality product, and de-risk it, frankly, which, we're making vehicles that are fast, and they are all road legal, homologated, plated vehicles. So they need, they're the safest vehicles of their kind.
Speaking of risk, are you worried about tariffs then?
We're not surprised by the results of the election, and so we've designed our supply chain to have, to work within whatever tariff regime exists. I do think that there will be opportunities that open up as the Trump administration encourages domestic production. And so we are fundamentally opportunistic in this. I think we have an advantage over incumbent companies, which is that we don't have a supply chain that we've been building for 50 years, where if we need to pivot it, it's existential.
Yeah.
We are in the early days of our company, and so we actually have a lot of flexibility, and we've designed the supply chain to be relatively portable based on geopolitical environments as well as, incentives that make it worthwhile to go into different geographies and also different methods for doing it. And over the long run, as we bring online new automated ways of production, we're going to be all over that. Infinite Machine is based in New York. I'm based here in New York, and we're focusing on New York and then the U.S. as our starting market. But we're a global company. We are going to ship vehicles everywhere in the fullness of time.
Yeah, you're doing a good job segueing for me, because I was going to say the next question is let's talk long term. So where do you see the market evolving in terms of different geos? Where do you see the vehicle lineup headed? Do you have plans to kind of work with fleets and deliverers? What's the 5-year plan there?
100%. So when we think about expansion, so the key thing with us is we need to start small and then expand. We're very ambitious, and so there's really no limit to our ambition. It's in the name, Infinite Machine. It has no bounds. But as a startup, it's one step at a time. We need to walk before we run. And so the way we see expansion is really in geographies and markets, and then in product categories. When it comes to geographies, we're starting in the US, we'll then go to Europe, and then more globally, Asia and beyond. And we'll very much do that when the time is right, when we have the flywheel moving, when we're logistically capable of doing it, when we've de-risked a lot of production. So that's geographies. On the product line front, we're going to have 2 product lines, a consumer product line and a commercial product line. And like I said, we want to make the best non-cars. So we're going to have products that have 2 wheels and maybe other things. I'll leave it at that.
Sure.
But the one thing I'll say is we're very interested in not only vehicles that go in the car lane, like P1, because it has a license plate, but we're very interested in the bike lane. We think there's a lot to do in the bike lane, and we'll be sharing more about that in the future.
Cool. I can't wait. So I think one thing that really impressed the market is you came out a few weeks ago with big fundraising news, raising millions, led by Andreessen. Let's talk about that, because this is a tough time for hardware companies to raise money. So how'd you do it? What can other people learn from that?
It was. I don't think many other companies were getting funded in this space when we were out raising. We are very lucky to be partnering with Andreessen Horowitz and their American Dynamism team. We're working with David Yulovich there, who's the partner who leads that fund. And I know David from actually my previous company, Universe, where we got to know each other. We never worked together officially, but started building the relationship. And when I announced that I was working on Infinite Machine, we got back in touch and realized it was really a perfect fit on both sides. Andreessen is interested in broadly American renewal and new American companies that are pushing the envelope of technology, design, and markets. And for us, that's exactly what we're looking for in a partner. And Andreessen has immense resources to help companies like us. The big thing I'd say, though, is venture investors are looking for capital-efficient ways to grow. So the reasons why hardware have been historically very challenging. So here's the thing with hardware. The companies that are successful are amazing businesses. It's very hard to get the scale out of it's very hard to beat a hardware business when it comes to volume in the success case. And
Sure.
Apple and Amazon, these are hardware companies fundamentally, but it's much harder to be successful, and it's often very expensive along the way. And so VCs are skeptical of that, and they also have portfolios of companies that have flamed out, raising hundreds of millions of dollars and not being able to kind of cross the transom. Especially in the heady days of the 2021 boom, when capital was really cheap, there was a lot of recklessness that was happening in the micromobility sector, as well as just hardware and hard tech at large, or consumer hardware. And so we've heeded those lessons, and we've kept our team very, very lean. And we're really all about how do we be extremely capitally efficient and invest in, first and foremost, product quality as the number one thing, and everything else is in service of that. Leaning on partners where it makes sense. And, the other thing I'd say is, while it's a bit of a, Andreessen made a non-consensus bet coming into the space. Like 4 years ago, this would have been a hot category. You would have a bunch of other companies coming in. But in 2024, it was, a bold, and I think it's kind of why they are who they are. They take those kinds of bets. But the reason why it's such a good time to fund a company like ours is because all of the infrastructure exists, like in a way that it didn't. And all the talent that's been built up over the past 10 years is now on the market and available.
The expensive lessons have been learned.
Yeah, and we get to learn from all these companies' mistakes. And because the market is a bit soft from a supply chain side, we are in a very advantageous position when it comes to working with suppliers in the broader ecosystem. And we're able to actually get resources that we'd have to be a much bigger company to otherwise get. So it's a little bit contrarian to lean in now, but now is actually, in my opinion, the best time to enter this category. And I think that ultimately we're a Gen 2 company in the space. We're not the first mover. We don't have an intention to be the first mover, but we want to be the last mover.
I like that. Last kind of topic. I'm curious, you've gone to market with this amazing, big kind of press-driven rollout, limited product for the kind of first foray. What are your thoughts on customer acquisition in the long term? Is this something that's always going to be, bought online? Is this going to be in showrooms? Obviously there's a lot of runway here, but how do you see customers learning about and then buying Infinite machines?
We're very much figuring out the playbook when it comes to go to market. What we know for sure is people need to see the bike. They need to get their butt on the bike, and they need to ride it ultimately, especially for P1. It's just such a thrilling experience. There really is nothing like it. And so we've learned that we're going to have a presence here in New York that customers will be able to come to at any point. We'll take it on the road. We're going to host events for clients in different markets. So really hands-on in the beginning. And then, of course, take online orders. We do have them available now for pre-order if people are interested. And, we want to approach this category creatively. So we know that this is a physical, human scale product. You want to see it in person. You want to experience it. We also want to leverage technology and make it available in that way. And so it's going to be a hybrid approach. We're not going to go, open 25 stores in a year, but there are creative ways for us to get out there. And in the fullness of time, I do think that there's a big opportunity in this category for a retail component and for kind of introducing the public to this product category. And so it's called kind of all in sequence. That's
great. Well, I, for one, cannot wait to test drive one next time I'm in New York. I'm going to hold you to a verbal promise there. Sure. Joe, this was a really fun conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.